Mr. Doug Casey from CaseyResearch.com on Zero Hedge. Doug Casey, the deep state is the source of all of our economic problems. Doug Casey, somehow I believe you, but my Tommy gun don't. Actually, my Tommy gun does. Doug Casey says we're well into what he calls the Greater Depression. America is headed for trouble, and it's critical to know exactly what's going on. That's why today's essay is so important. In it, Doug explains the source behind every negative thing that's happening right now and what's really going on behind the scenes. It's one of the most educational and entertaining pieces you'll read all year. Well, maybe I can give you a little synopsis from Zero Hedge. And I strongly agree with that. All your like Trump said, this group, what was his words he used? It was in that one video that says, this is the video that will get Donald Trump elected. Amazing speech. No teleprompter, no looking down, just telling you, shooting from the hip, so to speak. And he talks about all this corruption and how this club, it is for their livelihoods to continue. They all feed off of each other and then feed off of you ultimately. And so he basically talked about the deep state with this huge money machine they've created for themselves on your back, and he's going to reverse that. So Doug Casey's correct, is all I'm saying. I'd like to address some aspects of the Greater Depression in this essay. I'm here to tell you that the inevitable became reality in 2008. We've had an interlude over the last few years financed by trillions of new currency units. Now, what was the video I just did? I guess it would be yesterday, where I talked about this $3 trillion spent, record-breaking from October of 2018 to May of 2019 or something, right? I just did that video. Speaking of which, what did I title that? Just in case you wanted to go see it for some reason. And begin. I'm thinking. Federal spending tops $3 trillion through May for first time. Got Litecoin? So yeah. However, the economic clock on the wall is reading the same time as it was in 2007. And the black horsemen of your worst financial nightmares are about to again crash through the doors and end the party. And this time, they won't be riding children's ponies, but armored Percherons. To refresh your memory, let me recount what a depression is. Again, you know, when I start, every time I can't help myself, I just gotta stop. Guys, you got cryptos? Guys, you got your Bitcoin, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, maybe some other coins, a little Digibyte, some Theta, you know what I'm saying? A little red coin in case a massive pump's about to happen. Anyways, continuing, I always feel this, because I'm like, God, this could save us from those of us with eyes to see and ears to hear. And you can't have eyes to see and ears to hear if you are watching the mainstream news. You ever hear of anything like this in the mainstream news? No. Polls show Joe Biden is leading Trump right now, 55% to 40 in Texas. Joe Biden couldn't lead himself out of his own house. Okay? Leading President Trump. The biggest general definition is a period of time when most people's standard of living drops significantly. Hint, hint, people. Listen to me. I love y'all. I do. That's why I say these things. Hint, hint. Most people. Are most people into cryptocurrencies? No. No, they're not. Are most people into gold and silver even? Even though those damn things haven't really moved much in a number of years. No, they're not. Most people are in what the mainstream crap tells them to be in. Be in your 401k. Oh, I got 8% this year. Oh, I made 20% this year. Oh, I'm sorry. Some of these coins since December of 2018 are, these cryptos are up 600+%. Yeah, I said 100, not 20%, 8%. Oh, I got 8% annual return. Oh, I got 12% last year. My 401k is looking really good. Really? Because my crypto portfolio is like light years ahead of what your old school portfolio looks like. And I'm sure anyone else in crypto is probably saying the same thing. So yeah, a period of time when most people's standard of living dropped significantly. And I'm here to try to tell you guys why I don't think mine's going to drop significantly, or yours if you are into crypto. And you know, I only got $200. If you only got a couple $100 to put into crypto, listen, you're going to have to wait a few years before good times roll to you. I'm going to throw a couple coins out there for you to grab. Just two. Hail Marys. Digibyte and Theta. Okay? You might have to wait a few years, but hang on to those. So, by that definition, the Greater Depression started in 2008. Although historians may someday say it began in 1971, when real wages actually started falling. And what happened in 71? Oh, there was some kind of major monetary thing. What was that? Oh, gosh. Oh, that's right. We got off the gold standard. Shocker. It's also a period of time when distortions and misallocations of capital are liquidated. And when the business cycle, or the boom and bust cycle, which is caused exclusively by currency debasement, also known as inflation, climaxes. That results in high unemployment, business failures, uncompleted construction, bond defaults, stock market crashes, and the like. Fortunately for those who benefit from the status quo and the members of something called the deep state, the trillions of new currency units delayed the liquidation, but they also ensured it will now happen on a much grander scale. The deep state is an extremely powerful network that controls nearly everything around you. You won't read about it in the news because it controls the news. Politicians won't talk about it publicly. That would be like a mobster discussing murder and robbery on the 6 o'clock news. You could say the deep state is hidden, but it's only hidden in plain sight. The deep state is the source of everything negative that's happening right now. To survive the coming rough times, it's essential for you to know what it's all about. What could happen? What might happen? What is this deep state stuff? How does it affect me? Well, again, most people are going to be affected financially. When depressions come, you're affected financially, which stops everything else. You can't go eat. I'm not going out to eat anymore. I can't afford to go out to eat anymore. Are you kidding me? I got to go to the grocery store. Oh my God, you seen the price of the groceries? Holy crap, they're giving me smaller cans and food. Oh my God. Hell no, I can't go out to eat. When you're in that mode, why? Because you don't have money. Or you have less money than you need. You're in a depression. Some of y'all might be saying, damn, Snip, I've been in a depression my whole life. Didn't really think about it that way. Why? Because I could barely make ends meet. I'm not really saving much money. I get it. And that's what I'm telling you. I saw this coming miles away, light years ahead, right? I've been doing these videos for a long time. I tried to go the gold and silver route, mainly silver, ran up to 50 bucks. They crushed it on us. The same deep state controls that price too. And now here we are screwing on at $15 an ounce still for silver. Let's go into cryptocurrencies. We've already seen what they can do. Huge rewards if you're patient. And don't sell because you can't take it anymore. Just buy the freaking dips. If the worst case scenario, buy the dips. Oh, I might go lower. Buy the dips on the way down. So now the deep state. Now what causes economic problems? With the exception of natural events like fires, floods, and earthquakes. He said natural. Some of them might be. They're all caused directly and indirectly by the deep state through its wars, taxes, regulations, and inflation. Yes, I know this is an oversimplification that human nature is really at fault and the institution of the state is only a mass dramatization of the psychological aberrations and demons that lie within all of us. But we don't have time to go all the way down the rabbit hole, so let's just talk about the proximate rather than the ultimate causes of the Greater Depression. And here I want to talk about the nature of the state in general, and then something called the deep state in particular. A key takeaway, and I emphasize that because I expect it to otherwise bounce off the programmed psyches of most people, is that the very idea of the state itself is poisonous, evil, and intrinsically destructive. But like so many bad ideas, people have come to assume it's part of a cosmic firmament, when it's really just a monstrous scam. It's a fraud, like your belief that you have a right to free speech because of the First Amendment, or a right to be armed because of the Second Amendment. No, you don't. The U.S. Constitution is just an arbitrary piece of paper, entirely apart from the fact that the whole thing is now just a dead letter. You have a right to free speech and to be armed because they're necessary parts of a person being free, not because of what a political document claims one way or the other. That's a good point. Even though the essence of the state is coercion, people have been taught to love and respect it. Most people think of the state in the quaint light of a grade school civics book. They think it has something to do with we the people, electing a Jimmy Stewart character to represent them. That ideal has always been a pernicious fiction because it idealizes, sanitizes, and legitimizes an intrinsically evil and destructive institution which is based on force. As Mao once said, political power comes out of the barrel of a gun. But things have gone far beyond that. We're now in the deep state. So, speaking of the deep state, the concept of the deep state originated in Turkey, which is appropriate since it's the higher to the totally corrupt Byzantine and Ottoman empires, and in the best Byzantine manner, the deep state has insinuated itself throughout the fabric of what was once America. Its tendrils reach from Washington down to every part of civil society. Like a metastasized cancer, it can no longer be easily eradicated. I used to joke that there was nothing wrong with Washington that 10 megatons on the Capitol couldn't cure, but I don't say that anymore. Partially because it's too dangerous, but mainly because it's now untrue. What's now needed is 10 megatons on the Capitol, and 4 more burst in a quadrant 10 miles out. You know, he's joking here. In many ways, Washington models itself after another city with a deep state, ancient Rome. Here's how a Victorian freethinker, Winwood Reade, accurately described it. Rome lived upon its principle till ruin stared it in the face. Industry is the only true source of wealth, and there was no industry in Rome. By day the Ostia road was crowded with carts and muleteers carrying to the great city the silks and spices of the East, the marble of Asia Minor, the timber of the Atlas, the grain of Africa and Egypt, and the carts brought out nothing but loads of dung. That was their return cargo. The deep state controls the political and economic essence of the United States. This is much more than observing that there's no real difference between the left and right wings of the Demopublican Party. Exactly. Two-party nonsense system. It's well known by anyone with any sense, that is, by everybody except the average voter, that although the Republicans say they believe in economic freedom, but they don't, they definitely don't believe in social freedom. And the Democrats say they believe in social freedom, but they definitely don't believe in economic freedom. Who is part of the deep state? Who does number 2 work for? The American deep state is real, is a real but informal structure that has arisen to not just profit from, but control the state. The deep state has a life of its own, like the government itself. It's composed of top echelon employees of a dozen Praetorian agencies like the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA, top generals, admirals, and other military operatives, long-term congressmen and senators, and directors of important regulatory agencies. You know, like, the FDA. That drug's approved? That drug's approved. Marijuana? Absolutely not. That's a class 3 felony. That drug's approved, causes cancer, causes short life, shortness of breath, irregular heartbeats, lung cancer, kidney failure. Approved. Why? So that the club can make their enormous billions and billions of dollars at that pharmaceutical agency, which that person who worked at the FDA will retire and then go work for that company, which is a fact. The lady who used to run the FDA did exactly that. continuing on. But the deep state is much broader than just government. It includes the heads of major corporations, like I just explained, all of whom are heavily involved in selling to the state and enabling it. That absolutely includes Silicon Valley, although those guys at least have a sense of humor, evidenced by their "don't be evil," Google's "don't be evil" motto when they really are doing evil. It includes all the top people in the Federal Reserve, and the heads of all major banks, brokers, and insurers. Add the presidents and many professors at top universities, which act as deep state recruiting centers, all the top media figures, and of course, many regulators at things like Bohemian Grove and the Council on Foreign Relations. They epitomize the status quo held together by power, money, and propaganda. Propaganda, city of deep state. Altogether, I'll guess these people number 1,000 or so. You might analogize the structure of the deep state with a huge pack of dogs. The people I've just described are the top dogs. But there are hundreds of thousands more who aren't at the nexus, but who directly depend on them, have considerable clout and support of the deep state because it supports them. This includes many of the wealthy, especially those who got their ways thanks to their state connections. The 1.5 million people who have top secret clearances, that's a shocking but accurate number, by the way, plus top players in organized crime, especially the illegal trade, drug trade business, little of which would exist without the state, plus mid-level types in the police and military, corporations, and non-governmental or NGOs organizations. These are what you might call the running dogs. Beyond that are the scores and scores of millions who depend on things remaining just the way they are. Like Donald Trump said, these people depend on this status quo continuing on going, and I'm going to destroy it. And I'm giving power and wealth back to the people. Although I don't know if he used the word wealth. It will come automatically if he does what he says he's going to do. And he is so far. Beyond that are the scores and scores of millions of people who depend on things remaining the way they are, like the 50+% of Americans who are net recipients of benefits from the state. The 60 million on Social Security, the 66 million on Medicare, the 50 million on food stamps, the many millions on hundreds of other programs, the 23 million government employees and most of their families. In fact, let's include the many millions of average Joes and Janes who are just getting by. You might call this level of people, the vast majority of the population, whipped dogs. They both love and fear their master. They'll do as they're told, and they'll roll over on their backs and wet themselves if confronted by a top dog or running dog who feels they're out of line. These three types of dogs make up the vast majority of the U.S. population. I trust you aren't among them. I consider myself a lone wolf in this context, and hope you are too. Unfortunately, however, dogs are enemy of wolves and tend to hunt them down. The deep state is destructive, but it's great for the people in it. And like any living organism, its prime directive is to keep surviving. It survives by indoctrinating the fiction that it's both good and necessary. However, it's a parasite that promotes the ridiculous notion that everyone can live at the expense of society. It's a conspiracy headed by a man stroking a white cat? I think not. I find it's hard enough to get a bunch of friends to agree on what movie to see, much less a bunch of power-hungry miscreants bent on running and ruining everyone's lives. But on the other hand, the top dogs all know each other, went to the same schools, belong to the same clubs, socialize, and most important, have common interests, values, and philosophies. And by the way, none of that which you'd be on the same page with. The American deep state rotates around the Washington Beltway. It imports America's wealth as tax revenue. A lot of that wealth is consumed there by useless mouths. And then it exports things that reinforce the deep state, including wars, fiat currency backed by nothing, right? And destructive policies. This is unsustainable simply because nothing of value comes out of the city. Like the old Roman story. That's one hell of a good article, I'm going to say that. But we do have a little beacon of hope, and that person's name is Donald Trump. Had he not been there and we had Hillary, this probably would have been changed quite a bit in far worse what I just read you by this individual, because that might have been the reality we were already starting to see. Therefore, he would easily be able to write about it. But what he's saying is this thing is so big, there is going to be backlash one way or the other. There's going to be some people experiencing some very big hardships one way or the other, whether Donald Trump comes and saves the day or not. And I have to agree with that, which is why I am invested in cryptocurrencies and a little bit of silver. A little bit of silver too. Take care.